I'll be straight that it's really weird that every October my book of the month is not a horror book. Is this the month that changes? Let's find out. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back with another monthly wrap-up, this time for October of 2024. Spooky season always just zips right by because time flies when you're having fun, right? Well, with me, with spooky season this year, it's a little different because I did kind of keep that formula I've been using. One horror, one sci-fi, one fantasy, one miscellaneous, and I just added horror to that. So sci-fi horror, fantasy horror, etc. And it had an interesting and eclectic mix, I think, this month for doing it that way. And I'm really happy that I did because this is one of the closest book of the month races I've had all year long, and we're going to get to it. But first, let's kind of take a look at what I read in the month of October. I read 4 novels. Started a 5th, which was obviously slated for November, and I'm reading that right now, so I don't really count, but we will mention it. I did The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. This was one where I was excited because, like I told you last month, I was kind of looking for an author of a female variety in the horror genre to fill that void that Anne Rice had left. Now, what I meant by that is not that I wanted someone that writes like Anne Rice. That's not what I meant at all. Just, someone that I felt like was that constant female voice in horror that I kept going back to all the time. And a lot of people told me they thought it might be T. Kingfisher. So I picked up The Hollow Places. Now, I liked it quite a bit. I liked it as a hat tip to The Willows by Algernon Blackwood. It was very much in that vein. What I didn't like about it was every single time it started to get really, really freaky, she would kill all the tension by making a joke, like an MCU-style joke. And I can't stand that. You will do a slow burn like that, and you earn those scares. Don't kill it. Don't ease the tension. Let that tension hit. But overall, I had a good time. They went a little crazy, a little Evil Dead 2 there at the end, but in a way that I liked. I liked most of the book. Really, really did. But it was just a couple of those things, those little minor nitpicks that said, maybe my next T. Kingfisher book will be, which is going to be the twisted ones, by the way. Maybe the next one will be a little more of the just straight horror that I'm looking for without always killing the jokes or killing the tension with some MCU-style jokes. I don't need that. I don't need that in my horror. All the Fiends of Hell by Adam Neville. Adam Neville was an author I wanted to go back to because I bought like a dozen of his books because I just felt like he was going to be an author that I really liked quite a bit. But then I read Last Days last year, and I was just lukewarm on it. But I admitted, not really. Cult horror is not really a thing I'm into. Not really crazy about cults. Maybe it's just because I've studied Waco for so long. Out here in Texas, the Koresh cult out here. I just like I don't know. It's just not something that I'm just not into that, into the horror genre, and I didn't really like the Blair Witch vibe that I got from Last Days, but I wanted to read Adam Neville some more, and this one being the sci-fi horror offering was just perfect timing because I'd heard really, really great things about it, and it was really good. It was really, really good. Very much his version of War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. And it hit all those notes. I did like it was a fun horror romp, and it did a lot of things that I didn't expect it to, and that made it very, very enjoyable experience. And anytime you just give me just an everyman who's just kind of finding his way in an apocalypse or a dystopia, that's a lot of fun for me to get into. And All the Fiends of Hell did that really, really well to where I'm excited for my next Adam Neville read, which is going to be No One Gets Out Alive. But All the Fiends of Hell was a very, very fun experience. The Warrior Prophet, Book 2 and Prince of Nothing, is by R. Scott Baker. With The Warrior Prophet, this one was like, it's very, very, it's fringe. Is this actually fantasy horror? Because it's a grimdark world and really, really bad things happen. Definitely wouldn't say there's much horror outside of it, except atrocities of war. That's obviously something. But it wouldn't really kind of be something where you're going to say, hey, this is a horror story, I think. But as all things in that world, you can find yourself being like, hey, that's very, very disturbing. It's very uncomfortable. For me, uncomfortability is what makes horror go at this age around. But the Warrior Prophet, I did not like it as much as The Dark Discourse of Four, but it was still very good. Feels like maybe a little bit of middle book syndrome. It also feels like one of those that maybe when you reread it later or things later, you kind of look back at it and the arrow will be pointing up for sure. I enjoyed it. I like the second half of the book much better than the first half of the book, but really good character work, building up what Kellis is trying to do, and it's very much in that kind of evil Paul Atreides kind of way is how I feel like it. But Nair has MVP of the series for me so far, and I'm excited every time it's a Nair point of view. I'm super excited, and Camion is just a character I just feel so much for. This character's just going through so much, but another fun experience. I'm gonna say fun again. Fun. I don't know if fun is the word I would put on Prince of Nothing. But for me, it's just like that's one of my new favorite fantasy worlds, and I can't get enough of the history and the lore in that series. And I'm hoping book 3 continues to give me more of that, because I'm just anxious for knowledge in that universe. Because he's writing it in a way that it's just, like I said, it feels like the perfect marriage of Lord of the Rings and Dune, but based over the backdrop of actual history in the Crusades. And that's just a mix that I could have never, ever thought that I needed, but yeah, I definitely do. It's really, really good. Slewfoot by ℓ𝕤𝕤. This was one that I'd been putting off for a long time. I had kind of looked at it like, oh, well, ℓ𝕤𝕤, I think he's better known for his artwork. You know, I learned he actually did the artwork for the old Doom games as well. The art in Slewfoot is incredible. The thing is the book was really damn good too. If you're into the whole puritanical time period and writing some twisted things, and what I say is very much it's like, imagine The Crucible meets Robert Eggers' The Witch. That's kind of very much how I felt like, maybe with some monsters that Guillermo del Toro would come up with. That's kind of the mix you got here. The ending was a little bonkers, and I think anytime you're writing an ending in a horror novel, I don't think there's any genre where it's harder to land the ending than horror. Because if the ending's too dark, hey, thanks for leaving me in a bad place. If the ending's too happy, it's like, well, that's unrealistic, or that's not where it was going. Or if the ending's ambiguous, well, I need something to go off of. This is what I've talked about with Stephen King endings for years, is he gets so much crap for his endings because it's a lose, lose, lose. It's hard to please anyone, much less everyone. And with the ending of Slewfoot, I don't feel like it was that, but it did take a different turn than I was expecting. But the journey was excellent. It was really, really good, and I liked everything about it, and there's not really very many negatives I have for it. One thing I'd say is I think it was kind of sold as a grimdark book. It's not. I wouldn't quite call it YA, but I feel like if a teenager read this, they're not going to be scarred. I mean, there's some disturbing things in it, obviously. There's some graphic nature to it, but I don't feel like it's something that's, read at your own peril kind of thing. But I don't think that's a critique against it. It's a very good story. And I will definitely read more from ℓ𝕤𝕤. I've got Child Thief. That's the one I'm it's pretty much like a twisted version of Peter Pan. I've got that one to read next for him. So I don't usually tell you what book I'm going to read next by these authors, but it just kind of came up that way. But it is the time to pick that book of the month. With me, this one was so hard because you have a middle book, and I felt like that kind of eliminated it, especially when I didn't like it as much as book 1. I had a new novelist that I enjoyed, but I felt like she killed all the horror when it came to the jokes. That kind of eliminated it, but it came down to the other two, and it was very, very close, guys. Extremely close, but I have decided to go, as of this morning, I decided to go with All the Fiends of Hell by Adam Nevill, and I think that might be because I didn't expect to enjoy the found family aspect of this as much. Now, look, I'm a dad of young kids. The first thing I think about in an apocalypse situation, like I think back to The Road by Cormac McCarthy, and I'm like, I read that before I had kids. I don't think I could handle it now. So with this is, you've got this guy who's just an everyday dude. He's really unremarkable. He's made a lot of mistakes. He's just there. And in this world, someone like that can have great importance. This post-apocalyptic world where aliens are invading and they're just neutralizing everything. They don't want to negotiate. They don't want to talk. They just want you off the planet. That's kind of how it feels. I love, from the beginning, the way that the story handles the eradication of mankind. Basically, they flip a switch and turn off gravity, and everyone floats away, except for people who had some kind of mental illness or sickness. Now, if you want that explained, I don't know if this book's going to give you that. That's a big critique I saw with that. Oh, I didn't explain why this, that. I don't need everything. I don't need you to tell me how the magic system works. That's not my style. You're getting very much like a Walking Dead or The Last of Us kind of atmosphere where humanity is mostly eradicated. It's just these small bit of survivors. And not only are you being haunted by these really, really menacing beings, you also got to deal with the dregs of humanity that are still there. And we know when the world ends, well, your humanity kind of goes out the window in humanity. So it deals with all those things. But I love the aspect of him basically becoming protector of these young kids that he meets. And it's just, I don't want to say wholesome, because it is very much the time, like you keep being like, okay, he's going to mess us up, because that's just what he's done his whole life. But he feels like that. But that bond that the three of them make is just really, really good. And the big, I guess you say like the minor baddie, because I think the big bad obviously is the alien life, but the minor baddie, the human baddie, that is just despicable. And I mean, I was rooting hard against this guy, but it's a really, really touching story in that you see the growth of this guy who's like, I haven't amounted to anything my whole life. if this are going to be my final moments, I'm going to make sure that I, go out in a blaze of glory. I'm going to do things the right way. And he does. He's willing to lay down his life for these two kids he doesn't even know. It's one of those where you kind of look at it as every man. You think, I want to believe that I would make the same decisions in the apocalypse. It just, you find yourself, it's very, very easy to root for the protagonist in the book. And to me, it felt like an awesome, awesome version of War of the Worlds. What I said is, I love War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, but as I've grown, I'm like, yeah, I wish it was a little more vicious. This is vicious. This is really, really vicious. So there is some very, very disturbing moments in this when it comes to humanity just being wiped off the face of the earth, the survivors that are still there. It's gruesome. It'll have some moments that'll make you kind of be like, oh my gosh, but he does not pull any punches with that. And that's why I say sci-fi horror is something that is a very, very interesting little subgenre that I couldn't get enough of. So I love an alien invasion story. It's really hard to miss for me unless you do what Mercy of the Gods did and just make it a science project. With this, I felt like just dealing with the survivors that are left on Earth, running from these crazy, crazy alien species that are just trying to just eliminate us. It's good stuff. It's a hard formula for me to miss with, especially when it's a very, very much an R-rated version of that. I am an adult now. I like the adult version of War of the Worlds. That's an easy sell for me. But for this, I really enjoyed that journey of the found family and that bond between the protagonist and these two kids. And it was a good story. It was a really, really good story, and I enjoyed it. Like I said, the only criticisms I would have would be it is very much a cliffhanger. It is very much it's not going to explain everything to you. But for me, with a story like that, I'm here for it. It's like when I see a Godzilla movie, I don't want to know about the humans. I want to know about the monster. I want to see the monsters fight. With this, I just want to see the alien invasion and what this guy's going to do to survive in this new world. That's just kind of the story H.G. Wells kind of went with War of the Worlds. That's what I'm in here for. So with this, very, very high recommends. If you haven't read any Adam Neville yet and you like a good alien invasion story, you're going to be hard-pressed to find one better than this recently. It's really, really good. And again, if you find those aspects of found family, of doing the right thing, of a character arc taking a turn when things are at the lowest, I think you'll find a lot to like here. And it's got me super, super excited to read more of Adam Neville. I've got No One Gets Out Alive is the one that I'd planned to do. This just kind of fit that mold. If I was looking for a sci-fi horror book, and I said, perfect timing. This is his newest book. Why don't we go ahead and check this one out? But yeah, I had a great time with it. And that's why it is my book of the month for October of 2024. Finally, a horror book does win book of the month in October here on the channel. And I'm happy that it was All the Fiends of Hell. High recommend. Check it out. How about some of that most popular content for the month of October? I did 12 standard videos. I did 3, which you call short form videos. Those are less than 5 minutes. And I did 1 live stream. So about the usual output, I think. 2-3 videos a week is kind of what I kind of stick to now these days. I did drop the analytics section on here because since the hack, it's been terrible. And I just felt like all I was doing was bringing everybody down with my reaction to that. But let's just say there aren't very many green arrows anymore, but that's okay. I enjoy the audience that is here. So let's take a look at the most popular 5 here. As of this recording, with 13,000 views, my biggest video of the month was Best Horror Books and Authors for Beginners. This was just kind of one of those where a couple years ago I had so many questions about where should I start with fantasy. And I said, hey, I'll make that video. And it went over really well. And I always kind of said, I should do something like that with horror, but I want to make sure I read a little bit more first, because there was a problem I had in the infancy of this channel where I was like, well, I love horror, but I've only read Stephen King, So I've read enough authors now that I feel like I can make some recommendations. Now, I don't consider myself like, the all-knowing encyclopedia of horror. I think there are better channels out there for that. But for me, it was like, this is where I would recommend. Somebody comes to me and says, Mike, I want to start horror. Where do you think I should start? And what I do in that is I kind of break it down from like easiest to most difficult, the easiest authors to the more difficult ones, and just kind of what you're looking for. I go through several types of horror: body horror. Do you want cosmic horror? Do you want? That's the best way to do it, because it's just no other genre, I think, is there's so many little subgroups. Just kind of depends on what you're looking for. Me, I love coming of age supernatural horror. Yes, that is a subgenre within horror. And nostalgia horror is another one that I've really found myself liking quite a bit. So I think it's a good starting place for you if you've been interested. And in the month of October, every year, there are more people interested in trying out horror, and they don't really know where to start. So I think just knowing exactly what you're looking for it's going to help you to check that video out, I do think. The September 2024 book haul, obviously book hauls are going to be a big hit. They always are, and I'm thankful for everything you guys send me And I'm thankful that you guys continue to watch those videos. It was a fun month. October was another big one that I can't wait to talk to you guys about. Why you should read Stephen King. That one has 10,000 views. This is one I kind of put off making for a long time because I felt like I do enough into the multiverse stuff. And I got constant watchers. They know, look at the amount of Stephen King content I put on this channel. I think you should read it. And I talk about all the time about the things that make Stephen King great. But I said, okay, there are still new people finding the channel. There are people who don't watch every day. Maybe they want to know, maybe they're interested in reading Stephen King and they don't know exactly if it's going to be for them. So I kind of break down there, this is what I think that you should read it for. I mean, if you're looking for these things, these are what you're going to like. If you aren't looking for those things, maybe he isn't an author for you. It isn't much of where you should start with it because I've made that video before, but it's very much about what has made him my favorite author my whole life and all the things that he does just better than everyone else. So it was a tough video for me to make. I loved doing the reading introduction for it. It was so hard to decide what quotes to use because he's got some bangers, guys. He's been writing for 50 years. He's got some great quotes. For me, I decided to go with the theme of it, and a big theme in a lot of his books is growing up is scary, and growing up is even scarier when you got big supernatural monsters coming after you. But it's what that forms us into as adults. I think that's a very big theme in his books. He writes kids amazing, and he writes like that, thinking back to your childhood as an adult and that scary event that happened in your coming of age, and reflecting upon that is just kind of what makes his books go around for me. So again, if you guys need even more of a reason to read Stephen King, check that video out or just hit me up. I will always spread the good word about. I'm always an advocate for telling people why they should read Stephen King. My November reading plans is up to 9,000 views, and I think with that, it was just the excitement of I am ditching the whole formula of one per month. I had gotten back to just I'll read whatever I want. Big books are back on the menu. Mostly fantasy is going to kind of take over because look, in the end, this is a fantasy channel. And taking such a break to where I was doing one fantasy book per month, hey, maybe that's why I'm not doing the analytics section anymore, But with this, it was just like it's a return to normalcy, I guess, for a lot of people. It's mostly going to be fantasy books. It's mostly going to be chonkers. That's kind of what we do here, and a lot of excitement because I was also talking about The Devils by Joe Abercrombie, which I was lucky enough to get a review copy of. But people are always more excited about what you're going to read than what you have read. That's what I've always said. And then lastly, I thought it was fun to close down spooky season by talking about my next 10 horror books. That has 7,000 views. That's really just one where I was like, if you were looking at like your Netflix queue of like the next 10 books you were going to read, that's kind of like the plan I have for horror because I've discovered a lot of new horror authors. And there's many that I want to return to, as well as still many that I want to try for the first time. So I don't pretend that's going to be the next 10 that I read, but if you were a gun to my head right now, what are the next 10 horror books you're going to read? Those would be the 10, because I know something new will fly out of nowhere and climb up those ranks. But those are the 10 I say right now that I say I would go to. I want to give an honorable mention to one, because it's only been out for a couple days, but it's already kind of approaching some of these. 6,000 views. This is that argument of, should I wait for a series to be complete, or should I read it now? That's been something that's been an argument for a long, long time, long before Book 2 probably was even a thing. But it seems like it's been a bigger thing lately on Book 2. So just kind of want to give my point of view on it from both sides, because I feel like I apply to both. I do this all the time. I'll read books on release, and they're not complete, but I'll also be like, I'm going to wait for something else to finish. I kind of go into the reasons that I will do both and why there's no real right or wrong answer. I know it seems like everyone always wants you to pick a side on these things, and it might seem like I was hedging in that video, but I feel like I present good reasons for both sides. So I did want to kind of mention it there. What are my goals for the month of November? Well, look, returning to fantasy and putting big books back on the menu. There's lots of books that are, of the 750-page variety that I've been putting off for a while because I was taking that sabbatical after Shogun just kind of like wiped me out there for a bit. And I said, I want some short and snappy books there, and that's why I did that for a while, to kind of make sure, because you can get burnout if you do it just too much, I thought, and I felt like it was coming that way. And it's just in a book hangover way, because Shogun was amazing. It was up there for my book of the year. And so it was one of those things where it was more of a book hangover than a book burnout. I was just like, I need some smaller books here for a while, and going back to mostly fantasy on this channel. I'm not going to be neglecting the others. I've still, like I said, I've got all these plans for all these horror books, and I'm not going to neglect sci-fi as much as I used to. But fantasy is the bread and butter here, and I'll make sure that I focus on that, because again, I wasn't going to be reading 12 fantasy books a year. That's no way. There's way too much fantasy that I want to read. But really, in the end, it's just my goal is just to kind of clear the decks for Wind and Truth in December. Obviously, you got a new Stormlight book. This is the end of that first arc, and for many people, myself included, which I can go into another video maybe, this probably be the end of Stormlight Archive for me because we'll get into that another time. But this to me, this feels like the end of Stormlight Archive for me, and I'm very excited because it is doing a flashback character that I've been waiting for a while with Szeth. And it's I'm hyped for it. I'm really, really hyped for it. So make sure that everything's out of the way. Do got a ℚ𝕤𝕤𝕤𝕤 book in December as well. So if I could get that one in first, which is Last Kingdom by Bernard Cornwell, if I can get that in before, that'd be awesome. If not, who knows? We'll see what happens because November I do have some hefty reading plans in it. And, you got a Ken Follett book in there. Who knows what can happen because his books are just monstrous. But really just keep it fun and start ramping up that end of the year content. End of the year content's a lot of fun because you get to kind of look forward to some things you're planning in 2025. That's the more fun part for me, much more than my 10 favorite books of the year. Much more exciting for me is looking at those standalones for next year, looking at the new series I want to start next year, things like that. It just it's so optimistic as you just think about all you look at is those books that you're going to be starting is always like this sounds like the coolest thing ever. And it's just so exciting to think about. So that was the month of October. I can't wait to see where things head for the finale here of 2024. It's been a fun and interesting year, lots of new experiments, and I like to make sure that I keep things fresh by trying new things. And if they work, they work. If they don't, they don't. But hey, at least we tried, and that's what I'm going to keep trying to do here. And I hope you guys do enjoy it. So guys, how was the month of October for you? What was your book of the month? Why don't you drop in the comments and let me know, guys, and I will talk to you there.